What happened to the food?
Well, during the change, unfortunately I missed out because I had to get carting something across to the big boat, and during that time all the fellows got onto these boxes, just took everything that was in them, every bit of stuff, he didn't get any, and then there were people, including officers, walking around eating his food. And then he got to a stage and he discovered what had happened, and he stood up and he spoke to that crowd. He was going to fight anyone, this colonel he was.
We're not mentioning names, John.
He was going to fight anyone. And some fellow from the 2nd 29th hopped up and said, "Sir, I saw one of those boxes floating on the water."
So that's what happened to him.
He didn't get one thing out of all those boxes.
No.
And I was quite happy to see it all go, even though I didn't get any of it.
Yes, no. Bit disappointing, really. So you then went back to, in this vessel,
the 7 days we were back to Singapore.
To Singapore, and I guess, would you have been aware that the American subs were active in the area?
Well, that wouldn't have surprised me in the least at that stage, but of course the Japs said anyone could go below deck if they wanted. It was fairly cold. There was no way in the world I'd go and sleep down below deck. And there were toilets hanging out over the edge of the water on the side, and I don't mind one of those if the thing was torpedoed, somebody to float around on. And finally, without mishap, we got back to Singapore.
Yes. Now, you had Japs on the vessel and you had Koreans.
Yes.
Was there any animosity between the Japs and the Koreans?
I don't know, because half of them, they all looked the same to me. They were animals.
Okay, so now we place you back in Singapore, and this must be early 1944?
No, late 43.
Very late 43, so you're out early.
Just before Christmas.
Yeah.
I was on the first train load to go up to the road, and I was on the first boat load to come back.
Right. So that put you back in Singapore, and you then must have been there
before Christmas.
You were there for another 18 months before the end of the war.
That's right. Oh, more than that, yeah, a bit more than that.
Yeah. And what did you do in Singapore, in the Changi area?
We transferred back to Changi, and we didn't do anything for a little while. And then Japs were building what is now Changi Airport. There was a military airport in those days, and we went to work on the airfield. That wasn't too bad. The hours were reasonable enough. And while, of course, in those days salt was unprocurable, and we'd have someone would boil 6 gallons of seawater and let it boil a day, and you get a pint of salt out of it by the time you knocked off an evening. Yes. Dirty brown looking salt.
Yeah. What was that used for?
Oh, yeah, we used to use it ourselves. Just wasn't used for the camp, you know, you want a bit of salt there, but then about a pint of salt would come out of that.
Yes, yeah. But sometimes they used just seawater for cooking the rice too, didn't they?
They may have at some stage, but the majority of the place, sea was too far away for seawater to cook rice.
Yeah. And was it just a matter of surviving that last 18 or 20 months, or was it as hard as the line?
Oh no, no, not as hard as the line. No. Actually, when you look back at Changi was like, it was like going home virtually, going back to Changi, really. And when we came back from the line, it was just like going back to home. Even though Changi food was scarce there, discipline was a lot better there, and food monotonous. That's really what it was, you know. Yeah.
Yes.
But the Japs didn't worry you in Changi, walking around there. They weren't running around the camp all the time like that. They didn't worry you, and monotonous. Food was short. Of course, we had vegetable gardens there too. We grew vegetable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, did you work out on an island or something like that?
No, I didn't. No. People out on the old Blackamatti Island, which is now Sentosa, that worked out there.
And that's where the oil tanks, Shell oil tanks.
I think that's where it was, yeah. No, I didn't work out there.
Yeah.
Early in the piece, when I went there, I worked at Serangoon Road, and we worked at, we were wrecking cars. That was a hard job too. and I was in Ford. We worked in Ford works a lot of the time.
Now, I understand that some vehicles were stripped and then had some shafts put on them to use.
Oh yeah. Oh, well, we had those. We had trailers with the 4 wheels and the brake, and we had to use that to collect wood, collect rice around the camp. Anything to move around the camp on the trailer had a big bit of wire at the front of the stick on each side, and I'd pull along with about 7 or 8 men.
Yes.
And of course, when you're going down a hill, it was quite good. Just hop on and away you went.
As long as someone could steer it.
Yeah, but driver had the steering.
Still had steering.
Yeah, oh yeah. That was the only thing we had a way of moving anything around the camp. Because if you look at back before we went to the jar, Changi was quite a big camp.
Yeah.
It was spread over quite a big area.
Did Callaghan, what was his name? Blackjack.
Blackjack.
Is it Callaghan or Galligan?
I think it's Galligan,
did you have any contact with him?
Not really, no. He was a fairly good officer, I think.
Yes.
He felt looked on by the 2nd, 30th battalion looked on him quite good.
Well, that's understandable, but the guys who came in from Java didn't think so kindly of him.
Maybe not. I never ever saw any of those that came in from Java. Because they weren't there very long anyway.
Well, he just described them as the Java rabble.
And of course, a lot of those people that came in from Java, and not some of them came from the Middle East, according to Java, but a lot went to Java, I think, cleared out before the war finished in Singapore.
Yeah, well, there were some. Yeah.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
I know 2 blokes of our unit cleared out, but no, I never heard of those again.
Yes.
But quite a lot of the infantrymen cleared out before the war finished, and they virtually deserters, really. And they came in from Java.
Yes. Now, when war finished, how long was it before you were repatriated to Australia?
About 6 weeks. And we had a good time in Singapore. The weeks we were there, we were eating well. Of course,
how did you treat the Japs?
I didn't worry about them.
No? How did they react to the changes?
As far as I was concerned, they were finished.
So you're at your own leisure for 6 weeks in Singapore?
Yeah.
And then there were arrangements made for you to come home. Did you write home?
I can't even remember that. I could have, possibly could have.
How did you come home?
On Largs Bay. I came home.
And what was where did it go? What was its route to come home?
Around Northern Territory and not Brisbane and Sydney.
Yes.
But I was stopping Darwin too. But we ate up pretty well those few weeks because the boats that were coming into Singapore used to dump big quantities of food on the wharves. You'd go down there and have a feed and go on somewhere else. But my last days in Singapore, I know they said you weren't supposed to eat much. We had a bit of money because we were selling, where this chap I mentioned earlier promoted himself to a major and Lance Corporal. And we were selling whiskey and cotton. If he couldn't get the right price for whiskey in a shop, he'd get in the doorway and sell it outside. And we had quite a bit of money then. We hadn't been paid or anything.
No.
And then the last day in Singapore, I remember we sat in a cafe or restaurant all day, and I had 7 mixed grills in the day, and we had plenty of beer and stuff. That sort of appeared from nowhere, all that sort of stuff. And I can remember then I had another couple of Chinese meals before the boat went off. Before I came home. But
so wonder you weren't sick?
No, I wasn't sick. No.
Yeah.
But rice, see if there's a lot of rice around, I'd eat it. You know, you can eat 5 or 6 pints of rice, your stomach will run out like it's like beer. You know, you go to the toilet about 10 times after you eat, and it's all water, and soon goes. But I was a very good eater all the time. I would eat anything the Asiatic mob said picking stuff outside. It was good enough to eat, I'd eat it too.
Yes.
And I think that stuck to me a lot. I ate the banana flowers and the banana, middle of the banana palms.